Can call Todd Barclay.
Thank you, Mr Chair. As a new member on the committee, I'd like to acknowledge the current and former members who have sat on the committee and who considered this bill. I understand from hearing the contributions that have been made today that they've done a great job at trying to strike the right balance between the interest from an administrative perspective, an offender's perspective and a victim's perspective. But unlike the Greens' contribution, who tended to put more of an emphasis on the minority of offenders who may well be in an innocent position, who are being forced to go into some form of program where they don't necessarily agree with, I think I'd like to make my contribution more focused on the victims, because this government puts victims at the heart of the justice system, and our plan to reduce unnecessary parole hearings for offenders will reduce stress for the victims of these crimes. And as a party, we take a strong, and the Parole Amendment Bill implements our post-election action plan to reduce the number of unnecessary parole hearings where the offender has little prospect of release. Each year there are about 5,000 parole hearings, and on average offenders have about 3 hearings before they are granted parole. Mr Chair, the Parole Act will be changed to extend the maximum postponement period for offenders serving life sentences or indeterminate sentences and determinate sentences of 10 years or more, from 3 years to 5 years for the most extreme cases. It will also extend the maximum interval between parole hearings from 1 to 2 years. Now I want to go back to victims, because this is the main crux of my contribution tonight. And the next point I wanted to make was around the fact that this bill, and it provides for victims, offenders and other authorised persons who attend parole hearings remotely, such as via video conference, because it's not a comfortable experience for all victims to appear before the parole. And I appreciate that it's not a requirement in all cases, but whether or not they're there in person, they're certainly there in emotion, knowing that the hearing is taking place. So for victims of crimes, should they have been faced with a very stressful prospect of parole hearings year after year, when an offender is clearly not safe to release into the community and has made little or no effect of rehabilitation, they should not be faced with a stressful prospect, and that's what the intention of this bill tries to bring forward. Mr Chair, this government was elected to improve the justice system for those who find themselves in it through no fault of their own, and we've received a clear mandate to do so. And over the last 6 years, we've made a strong number of significant improvements to the justice system. We've put 600 extra police into the front line, when we've seen a 155% increase in foot patrol police officers between 2011 and 2013, and we've given our police new tools such as tasers, lockboxes in cars, DNA testing of offenders, and smartphones and tablets. And just the rolling out of smartphones alone and tablets is saving more than 500,000 police hours each year, which is the equivalent to about 345 extra police officers. And as a result, we've seen the lowest crime rate in 35 years. Reoffending is down more than 12%, Mr Chair. This is partly because more prisoners are receiving drug and alcohol treatment before they leave prison, and it's also partly because all prisoners are now receiving education with individual learning plans designed individually for them. I suppose an interest to the taxpayers, prisoners and victims is that these prisoners will be integrated into society through these added sort of social systems that are put upon them while they're in prison, to try and help them get back into a system where they can enter the workforce and enter society without feeling like they're ostracised before they enter back into society. So, Mr Chairman, this government is putting victims at the centre of the justice system, with tougher punishments on offenders, new laws and new services for victims. And while we can never legislate away the pain and suffering faced by victims, these changes proposed in this bill will certainly help ensure that victims are not re-victimised by their participation in this process. Thank you.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Do you want to? Yeah. Mr Chairman, I just want to pick up a couple of